Today, on Destination Polaris, we head to Nevada for the biggest off-road race in North America. Line them up, boys. It's time for the Mint 400. Destination Polaris starts right now.
Today on Destination Polaris, we're at the oldest and most prestigious off-road race in America, the Mint 400. And this year, Polaris has stepped up big time and taken over as title sponsor. We'll check out the 3 days of festivities that lead up to this epic marathon battle right here in Sin City, Las Vegas. Then watch nearly 70 UTVs battle it out on the gnarliest and most challenging race course in the sport. The Mint 400 race was inspired by four men who in 1967 set a world record for the longest off-road driving trip. Leroy Wickham and his friend John Sexton set out on a week-long drive in two custom-built Quixote dune buggies, driving from Fremont Street in Las Vegas to the Sahara Tahoe Hotel in Lake Tahoe. This epic adventure caught the attention of Mint 400 hotel executives who worked with Wickham and Sexton to create the Mint 400 Del Webb Desert Rally in 1968. The national media coverage of the first Mint 400 rally made the marathon race famous overnight, and it captured the attention of off-road racers around the world. The Mint became a pillar of American racing culture for the next 20 years and continued to gain popularity all over the world. Indy 500 winners Parnelli Jones, Al Unser, Rick Mears, and Roger Ward raced the Mint, as did off-road champions Mickey Thompson, Ivan Stewart, Jack Flannery, Walker Evans, and Rod Hall, to name just a few. Entertainment stars James Garner, Steve McQueen, Ted Nugent, and Chuck Norris all tried their hand at taming the legendary race. But in 1988, the Mint Hotel was sold and the race organizers disbanded. The world-famous Mint 400 race went dormant, but not forgotten, for 20 years. In 2008, the Snore Off-Road Race Group resurrected the Mint 400 with help from longtime off-road racing supporters General Tire, and it quickly became the most important race in American off-road racing once again. Polaris joined the Mint 400 in 2013 as the presenting sponsor, and that year Coastal Racing won the first ever Mint 400 UTV Pro Class Championship. In 2014, Jagged X Racing dominated the field, and Brandon Schuler took home the win. This year, nearly 70 UTVs entered the Mint 400, making it the largest class at the most important and popular off-road race in America. By sponsoring the Mint 400, Polaris has shown once again that they truly do care about the sport and the industry inspired by their vehicles. And more importantly, they realize that the memories made with friends and family when competing in races like the Mint will last a lifetime. The Mint 400 is held each year in Las Vegas, Nevada on the second weekend in March. It's much more than just a single day of racing though. It's an entire off-road festival that begins midweek and leads up to the race on Saturday. The annual four-wheel parts Mint 400 vehicle parade kicked off the event. Over 100 vehicles lined up and drove from the South Point Casino down the Strip to Fremont Street. This was the longest vehicle parade in history for Sin City, and the UTV class was well represented. Thursday night is always a big party at the Mint 400, and this year was no exception. Polaris sponsored the massive Mint 400 main stage down on Fremont Street, and thousands of off-road enthusiasts showed up for the festivities. A new Miss Mint 400 was crowned. Miss Amy Scott of San Diego, California took home the highly coveted crown, as well as $5,000. And then the top trick truck and Class 1 teams in the world battled head-to-head during the KMC Wheels Pit Crew Challenge presented by Mystic Lubricants. On Friday, the world-famous Mint 400 contingency descended upon Fremont Street East. Over 10 square blocks were filled to the brim with off-road manufacturers and vendors, and over 20,000 off-road enthusiasts showed up to walk through the spectacle. So we're at Tech and Contingency on Fremont Street here in Las Vegas. Everything from trophy trucks to Polaris RZRs are making their way down the road, where at the end they go through technical inspection and preparation for tomorrow's big race.
Yeah, basically you got to have a flawless race to, the level of competitiveness this year and how it's getting is just getting crazy. So, I mean, to have a flawless race is going to be the only way that you're going to be able to pull off a first place finish here.
It's awesome, the whole attendance, the people down here, all the vehicles from trophy trucks to the little cars. It's just such a cool event to have all these people checking you out, seeing all the cool things down here in Las Vegas, downtown Vegas. You know, it's funny, as long as I've been around motorcycles and living in Southern California, you see all the, Baja races, the Mint 400, all these legendary things, but I've never been to one. And just, by help of Polaris RZR and Red Bull, I'm here. Haven't even raced or anything, and I'm addicted already, so not a good sign for my wallet.
I'm from Detroit. My family worked for General Motors. I worked for General Motors, and we used to do all the off-road events for them. And so I think starting at maybe 17, 18, I was coming out here to Laughlin for that race every year. And was, back when Chevy Thunder was like the king. And I got to go for a ride in one, and that definitely sparked my interest in all this. And as soon as I had $5 extra, I went and bought myself a ridiculous one car, and I now am in the sand dunes every single holiday with my family, and I love being in the desert. So it's really cool to be out here at the Mint 400 because I grew up knowing about the Mint. I'm a huge fan of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and it's just really neat to be a part of something that's so historic and has maintained over the years and persevered.
Don't touch that remote. When we come back, we'll see the start of the world-famous Polaris RZR Mint 400, sponsored by General Tire, right here on Destination Polaris.
Destination Polaris is sponsored by Super ATV, your trusted source for high-quality off-road parts and accessories. And by Progressive Insurance. Think easier, think Progressive. And by Polaris Visa Card. Power your passion. Earn Polaris cash on all of your purchases.
Welcome back to Destination Polaris. We're at the world-famous Polaris RZR Mint 400 in Las Vegas, Nevada. And after 3 days of festivities, it's time to go racing. The Mint 400 is broken up into 2 races. The limited race, which starts early in the morning and includes the UTV classes, and the unlimited race, which starts midday and features the trick truck teams, which are the ultimate over-the-top race trucks. The Mint is unique because it's a lap race, not a point-to-point race like most desert races. This year, the race course is 120 miles, and most competitors, including the UTVs, race 3 laps. This is why the Mint 400 is so challenging, because as a driver, you have to pass the slower traffic in front of you, and the race course itself changes radically from lap to lap as it gets worn down by all the other racers. This race is not for the faint of heart.
UTVs are taking off onto the course at the 2015 Mint 400. 2x2 every 30 seconds. They are charging hard into the Nevada desert to go for their shot at winning the 2015 Mint 400.
All of the UTVs left the start line in the dark. The Best in the Desert racing officials determined the UTV start order based on results from the UTV World Championship at the direction of the Mint 400 owners, the Martelli brothers. UTV World Championship winner Brandon Sims and his number 1913 Lone Star Racing Polaris RZR had the lucky row 1 start position and battled the number 1946 Perkins Dirt RZR off the start line. Right behind them was the number 1921 of Johnny Engel in his Baja 1000 Championship UTV Inc. Polaris RZR, with number 1911 Brian Bush and the number 1948 of Matt Burrows in the mix early on. All of the usual suspects were in the hunt this year, including Mint 400 champion Scott Kiger and Brandon Schuler, as well as Ryan Pullman, Jeff Obering, and Justin Lambert of Cognito Motorsports. Wes Miller, Michael Caffro, and Cody Nygren, Jacob Carver, and Dan Fisher made up a pack of guys who were all itching to snag a win from the big boys. They put pressure on the leaders right off the bat. As the sun cracked over the mountains, the first battle of the day began to shake out. Johnny Engel caught Brandon Sims and made the pass in the silty haze, moving out to first place overall. The two would battle most of the day. Newcomer Dustin Jones of S3 Power Sports, who started in the 6th row, did some incredible driving on his opening lap. He moved from 5th place to 2nd. Number 1936 Jacob Carver passed several cars and rocketed his way into 3rd. But it was Mint 400 champion Brandon Schuler who impressed the most. He started in the 18th row and moved into 4th place on corrected time by the end of lap 1. Jason and Derek Murray put in solid work on lap 1, rounding out the top 5. The sun and dust at the Mint 400 are always a factor for UTV racers. This course is rough and nasty. Driving through it at top speed with low visibility is not only challenging, it's downright dangerous. Don't move when we come back. We battle through the second grueling lap at the greatest off-road race in America, the Polaris RZR Mint 400, sponsored by General Tire, only on Destination Polaris.
Destination Polaris is sponsored by Aluma Trailers, the best aluminum trailers available. And by Wicked Built, make your machine wicked. And by Brimstone, camp, ride, kick back, and cut loose.
Welcome back to Destination Polaris. We're at the greatest off-road race in America, the Polaris RZR Mint 400. And right now, nearly 70 UTVs are battling across the brutal Las Vegas racecourse. This is the ultimate UTV desert off-road race, and as we've seen already, anything can happen. The battle for the win at the Mint 400 heated up on lap 2. Johnny Engel and the 1921 Polaris RZR would hold a massive 10-minute lead over the 1978 of Dustin Jones, who was sitting 5 minutes ahead of 3rd place Brandon Schuler. Being the leader is usually rewarded by clean air. However, Engel was forced to pass dozens of other limited class trucks and buggies as he continued to put a sizable gap on the rest of the field. The 1934 Coastal Racing RZR, now with R.J. Anderson behind the wheel, began to make a move on Schuler, putting pressure on the champion while battling for 3rd place. The 1936 RZR of Jacob Carver, the 1931 Jagged X RZR piloted by Keith Redstrom, and the 1918 RZR of Justin Lambert all maintained their pace and remained in the hunt for the podium. Despite starting in the 16th position, Ryan Pullman in the 1962 Supercross.com RZR passed over 10 UTVs on lap 1, and during lap 2 had moved his team into the top 10 overall. Other notables through the first 2 laps were Jeff Obering piloting the 1902 Colib Air Polaris RZR, Michael Caffro in the 1975 Polaris RZR, and heavy hitter Mark Burnett in the 1905 Monster Energy Polaris RZR.
We've made our way to main pit, where we're awaiting to see who our leaders are heading out into their 3rd and final lap. The intel we have now is that Johnny Engel in the 1921 Polaris RZR is still your physical leader. But the word we're getting from the pits is that Brandon Schuler in the 1919 Jagged X Polaris RZR very well could be our leader on corrected time.
As racers entered the main pit at the end of lap 2, driver fatigue began to set in. Already, 19 UTVs had succumbed to the brutal Mint 400 race course. Heading out onto lap 3, the top 5 were Johnny Engel in the 1921 Polaris RZR, Dustin Jones in the 1978 Maverick, Brandon Schuler in the 1919 RZR, Jacob Carver in the 1936 RZR, and Keith Redstrom filling in for Craig Scanlon in the 1931 Polaris RZR. When we get back, the exciting and heartbreaking conclusion of the 2015 Polaris RZR Mint 400 sponsored by General Tire, right here on Destination Polaris.
Destination Polaris is sponsored by Dragonfire Racing, feel the heat, and by Maui Jim Sunglasses, the fastest growing premium polarized sunglass maker in the world, and by Rugged Radios, the authority in communications.
Welcome back to Destination Polaris. We are on the third and final lap of the 2015 Polaris RZR Mint 400, sponsored by General Tire. 70 UTVs left the start line just prior to sunrise to battle nearly 400 miles at the biggest desert race of the year. Over 20,000 off-road fans showed up to Primm, Nevada to watch the exciting racing action.
We're here at Main Pit, where race leaders are making their way through and on out onto their third and final lap. Track conditions are deteriorating and attrition is really starting to set in. Last word we got is that Brandon Schuler in the 1919 Jagged X RZR could be our race leader on corrected time. All we can do is sit and wait. So stay tuned as we bring you more from the Mint 400 right here on Destination Polaris.
Cody Nygren, in his first appearance at the Mint 400, moved his 1916 Polaris RZR into the top 10 while on the final lap. The 1905 of Mark Burnett suffered a mechanical, and that meant the 1917 of Murray Motorsports and the 1988 RZR of Wes Miller could take advantage and move their RZRs into the top 10. The 1936 of Jacob Carver began to slip in the running order. With only 20 miles remaining, the sprint to the finish became an all-out war. It's always amazing how a 400-mile off-road race can determine winners and losers by minutes and sometimes only seconds. After leading the race for the entire day, Johnny Engel continued his relentless pace as he charged towards the finish. Behind him, Dustin Jones, RJ Anderson, Ryan Pullman, Brandon Schuler, Corey Sappington, and Justin Lambert all fought for Mint 400 glory. There's an old saying in off-road racing that to finish first, you must first finish. RJ Anderson was running at a crazy fast pace despite having a blown-out tire. Justin Lambert had to make a quick repair just miles from the finish. Johnny Engel, with less than 5 miles to go while enjoying a dominating 10-minute lead, would feel his Mint 400 win slip away. As Johnny pulled into the final checkpoint of the race, it suffered a catastrophic failure to his powertrain. As he and his co-driver exited the vehicle to assess the damage, they watched helplessly as their once commanding lead was overtaken by Dustin Jones. One by one, racers Dustin Jones, Justin Lambert, Brandon Schuler, RJ Anderson, and Ryan Pullman raced by the now sidelined 1921 of Johnny Engel. As teams sat waiting at the finish line, time splits were being calculated to see just who would come out on top. In the end, Dustin Jones would win the 2015 Polaris RZR Mint 400. Behind him in second was Ryan Pullman in the 1962 Supercross.com Polaris RZR. And finishing less than a second later, in third place was R.J. Anderson and Scott Kiger in the 1934 Coastal Racing Polaris RZR. 2014 Mint 400 winner Brandon Schuler would finish just off the box in fourth place in his 1919 Jagged X RZR. The 1902 RZR driven by Jeff Obreen would round out the top 5. It's no surprise that 21 of the 23 finishers were piloting Polaris RZRs.
Had a great time. It was super fun. What an amazing event for Polaris and the Mint and everything. This was a great time.
Mint 400 is awesome. I mean, I like desert racing now. I've always been a short course guy, and it's never that I had anything against desert, but it's cool to come out to an event like the Mint 400 and see all the energy that goes on out here and all the racers.
Not only did Polaris dominate the entry list and title sponsor this great race, they brought out the Polaris RZR Experience Tour to the start-finish line and put hundreds of off-road enthusiasts behind the wheel of their championship-winning machines. If there is one off-road race to put on your bucket list, it should be the Mint 400. The Polaris RZR Mint 400 will return to Las Vegas March 9th through the 13th in 2016. Visit themint400.com or at the Mint 400 on Facebook for the latest information on the Great American Off-Road Race.
What an amazing week of festivities that all culminated with one of the best desert races we have ever been a part of. Congratulations to all the finishers, but especially to the winners of the 2015 Polaris RZR Mint 400. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Destination Polaris.